Hello everybody, I hope you are all safe out there and doing well. I am Old Gamer Joe with another Media Moogle review today, but I myself have been hitting the streets. That's right, the cyberpunk-infused streets of Neon City Riders. This game comes from Mecha Studios and was published by Bromeo. And while this is a game that visually and aesthetically seems to have everything going for it in my direction, something that I would love, it makes some really frustrating gameplay and design choices that hold the title back from me fully being able to embrace it. You will take control of Rick, who essentially reminds me of a Casey Jones type in this game. He is tasked with cleaning up the mean Neon City streets from a group of vigilantes who are of course trying to overthrow it and take over the city themselves. The game begins in a world of virtual reality, which is essentially the tutorial of the title, and throws quite a bit at you, but the main gameplay is actually combat-wise sort of similar to one of the old top-down Zeldas in a lot of ways. That's what I was reminded of anyways. You can go up to your enemies, learn their very basic patterns, and slash away at them, also while dodging. And you'll start out the game with 4 pretty cool abilities, including some X-ray type vision, which allows you to see things that you normally can't see, or the ability to smash through walls, which is essential to actually getting through the game. You will need some of these abilities in order to succeed and advance. And unfortunately, after that opening tutorial, you are stripped of the majority of these abilities, which I understand is a pretty typical thing in a lot of video games, to have your powers taken away from you and then set you out on a quest to get them all back. But the problem becomes that you are dropped into kind of an openish setting where you can talk to various townfolk in the Neon City, but really kind of turned loose, and it's a lack of direction that leads to a lot of frustration early on, and a lot of wandering and what feels like wasted time. So you end up wandering around trying to figure out what to do next. There is a quest log, which is a little bit helpful, or you can buy a hint for a whopping 50 credits. Credits are not super easy to come by in this game, however, because you will have to deal with some frustrating enemy patterns which feel cheap and unfair, not because the patterns are difficult to figure out, but because the enemies tend to like to gang up on you, creating chaos and a basically winless situation. So in my experience, any credits that I did earn always seemed to have to be synced back into either a vending machine or a vendor themselves in order to get my health back. And so there are a few different zones in the game, all with different bosses, but what ends up happening is, if you happen to go into a zone that is too difficult, which most of them seem like they are, you'll likely end up wandering off back through the Neon City, which thankfully there is a fast travel feature that is helpful, and you'll once again find a new area and be in search of a hopefully more merciful setting that you can actually get through in hopes of earning your abilities back and making the game somewhat fun again, because without those abilities, boy, is the combat really a drag in this game. And that's really a shame, because the developer has created a really nice to look at world that's interesting. I love cyberpunk stuff. I can never get enough of it. I know that some people out there are saying, this aesthetic is getting a little tiresome now. Bring it on, I say. They do a great job of creating cool areas, cool looking enemies, and a really vibrant style that is fun. There's lots of personality and flashing lights, though I will admit in the menus or when you are trying to purchase items, there is a flashing that was a bit grating to my eyes. Unfortunately though, the soundtrack doesn't capitalize on this excellent aesthetic because it is generally pretty good music that loops far too soon and doesn't go deep enough into its own compositions to become more interesting beyond a very quick 20 to 30 second loop over and over again. Some of the songs I did encounter were a little more fleshed out than others, and I really like the techno beats and the style of the soundtrack, but overall they did not explore these compositions well enough for me to fully get on board with what is usually a style of music that I quite enjoy. But overall, graphically, I was reminded of a Genesis title in a lot of ways, which I really liked. I think that the game has a really cool look and an okay soundtrack that is kind of squandered by its own shortcomings in terms of its gameplay. So in the end, this is a game that did everything graphically that it could to try to pull me into its universe, but some sloppy writing, some poor gameplay decisions, including stripping away all of your powers for potentially hours on end as you wander about, make this a really frustrating and a far more difficult title than it should have been. You will die a lot in the game, and that's just because of the way that it is set up without you having your abilities to dodge for such a long time. I think a lot of players are going to give up because of the fact that they are just going to get frustrated, confused, the lack of direction, the lack of focus, all lead to an experience that could have really been a lot of fun and should have been a lot of fun, but ultimately is not. I think if the gameplay of this title had gotten the same amount of attention as the graphics, then Neon City Riders would have been a much better title, but as it stands, it is a frustrating, difficult, and scatterbrained title that doesn't know if it wants to focus on action or some very rudimentary puzzles, resulting in a game that feels disjointed and confusing in a lot of different ways. The game is currently $19.99 on Steam and Switch and is available now. For more on Neon City Riders and all of our other content, please head on over to MediaMoogle.net, where you can also hear some awesome podcasts like I Dream of Indie. Also, if you have enjoyed the video content today, please do hit the subscribe button below. Thank you so much for your support of Media Moogle's content.